Hello, this is Music Tech Help Guy. Welcome to episode 23 of my Logic Pro 10 video tutorial series. In this episode, we'll take a look at Flex Pitch, one of the new features in Logic 10. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Flex Time, I recommend you go back and watch my other Flex Time videos, but Flex Time was a feature that came out in Logic 9, which allows us to adjust the timing and quantize the timing of audio. Flex Pitch is really cool because it allows us to adjust the tuning and the pitch of individual tracks. It allows you to correct the tuning in vocals or in instruments. Okay, so to start, I actually have three examples for you for this video, but just to start, I have a very basic, just a monophonic synth lead here, and I'm using this because it's really simple material. It's going to be really easy to tune. So let's take a listen to what we've got going on here. So again, it's just a really simple C major monophonic synth lead. It's not perfectly in time, but it is perfectly in tune. So one of the easiest things to do with Flex Pitch is to change maybe a melody that's already been recorded, like this synth lead here. So to turn on Flex Pitch, all you do is select the track that you want to turn on Flex Pitch. Actually, you don't even really have to do that. Click on the icon up here for Flex Time. And then on the track that you want to affect, select the proper flex mode here. We talked about these other ones in previous videos. But we're going to choose Flex Pitch. And it'll analyze the waveform for transients, and then it will allow us to adjust the tuning of those transients. Now, you can actually edit pitch right out in here. If you hover over these little lines here, you can pull up or pull down the pitch of any note. I really don't like editing out here just because it's not very intuitive. So we're actually going to use the track editor to edit with. So I'm just going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit here, and then just double click on the top of the region here, and it'll open up the track editor. Now, this is what Flex Pitch looks like in the track editor. It's essentially a lot like a piano roll editor. What you see is the waveform in the background, and then you see just these individual notes that represent the pitch of each of the notes in the waveform. So if I just double click on the ruler up here, it'll start playback. So one of the simplest things you can do is, let's say I want to take this melody and I want to alter it in some way. Let's say instead of my A natural here, maybe I want to make this A flat. One thing you can do is just click on the middle of the note. You'll get this little hand here, and then you can just pull straight down or up, and you can alter the pitch of that note. The other thing you can do, is you can click on the piano roll over here. Just click on A. It'll actually select all of the A's in the recording. So maybe I want to pull all of them down. Now that they're all selected, let's pull them all down to A flat. Likewise, maybe I want to do the same thing to all of my E's here. Maybe I want to pull, well, there's only one E, but let's say I want to pull that E down to E flat. So basically what I've done is I've just turned a major recording into a minor recording. So let's see what this sounds like. And there we go. Another thing that you can do with Flex Pitch is you can actually quantize audio just like we can with Flex Time. If you hit Command A to select everything, or you can just select the notes that you want to affect. You don't have to select all of them. What you can do, let me just make this a little bit bigger here. What you can do is you can go to this time quantize feature here and quantize just like you would like we did in the region parameters up here for Flex Time. So it looks like our fastest rhythm here is a 16th note. So I'm going to choose 16th note, and you'll see that all of the waveforms snap to the grid at a 16th note. Now, just like working with Flex Time, this is, this is imperfect. It's not perfect. There may be some things that we have to go and fix later on, but let's see what this sounds like. yeah, right here the note was a little bit early, and maybe I want to change the rhythm of this one here from an eighth note to a quarter note. Let me go ahead and turn the metronome on here so you can just have a more of a rhythmic reference. But what you can do is if you hover over the right or left kind of boundary of each note, you get this little trim tool. And you can actually pull this right or left to trim these notes. And there we go. And so now I've got two quarter notes rather than this early note and this what used to be an eighth note. And there we go. So that's just a really basic introduction to how flex pitch works. Let's look at a more complex example. In this example, I have just a vocal melody, and what we're going to do is we're going to use flex pitch to tune her vocals. So this is what the vocal melody sounds like right now.
In this world of ruin, in this world of tragedy, you've got to take what you can get, gotta give what you can live with.
Now, obviously, when you're working with vocals, there's a whole other level of complexity to trying to determine what note she's singing, which words or which syllables are going to be identified as transients, things like consonant sounds like S sounds and T and ch sounds, things like that. So there's a whole nother level of complexity to this than what we saw with the synth lead. Likewise, or because of that, there are going to be certain elements of this recording that don't get picked up or recognized by flex pitch. So let's go ahead and just turn flex pitch on. Let's turn on flex, select flex pitch, let it do its analysis, double click on it to open up in the track editor. And let's just zoom in a bit here. And there we go. Now, this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. There are points where maybe she's breathing or it's like the tail end of a word that are just completely left out. Again, right here and here. And so these sorts of things are all over the place. You'll also notice that there's these little squiggly lines all on these notes. What the squiggly line represents is her pitch drift or her vibrato across time. Now, I realize it's not always intentional vibrato, vibrato just meaning kind of a wavering in the pitch across time, but sometimes it's like an unintentional vibrato, maybe a pitch falling or rising. Another really common thing to see is like this here at the tail end of a phrase, pitch drops off, or maybe at the tail end of, or at the beginning of a phrase, at the beginning of a word, maybe pitch kind of jumps up. So there's all these extra things that you have to keep in mind when working with vocals as opposed to working with instruments. So the melody we're looking at here is in the key of D minor. So one of the things that we can do is if you know what key the vocals are in or the melody is in, you can actually quantize pitch. And this is called a scale quantize over here. So what I can do is hit Command A, and then I'm going to go over to my scale quantize and choose D, and then I'm going to choose natural minor. Now, natural minor is just regular old minor. There's harmonic minor, there's melodic minor as well, and there's a whole bunch of other scales as well. So if you're familiar with music theory and you know what scale the melody is being built upon, you can better make the decision as to what to quantize to. So by choosing D natural minor, all of the notes are going to snap to the nearest note in D natural minor. The other thing we can do is we can adjust the basically the pitch correction itself. I don't know if you noticed this, but then even though we quantize the pitch to a scale, some of the notes are actually still not perfectly seated on the correct note here. For instance, this one's a little bit flat, that one's a little bit sharp. So what you can do is hit Command A, and you can pull up the pitch correction over here. And what this does is it pulls notes closer to their intended targets. So let's see what this sounds like.
In this world of ruin, in this world of tragedy, You've gotta take what you can get. Gotta give what you can live with.
For the most part, that sounded pretty good, except this part right here.
Tragedy.
On trad and then JD, like the middle part of the word, she's got these kind of scoops in the word that have been quantized to, looks like A here, when really they should be lowered. So let's listen to that one more time.
Tragedy.
Yeah, and Logic does recognize that, hey, this is part of a word, this is part of a syllable here as well, and but it's just pushed them too high. So one of the things we can do here is let me just zoom in a bit. When you hover over the note, you'll see that there are 6, I guess, hot spots, if you will, on the note here. The middle one adjusts vibrato. The right is formant shift. The left is gain. The upper left is pitch drift. The upper middle is fine pitch. And the upper right is pitch drift again. What we're going to do with these 2 notes is, because they've been pulled up too far, we are going to kind of just pull them down a little bit with the fine pitch. You could just pull them down a full half step by clicking in the middle of the note, but I'm just going to pull them down this way. And let's see what that sounds like.
Tragedy.
Yeah, that sounds fine. Another thing you can do is, if you're looking for that kind of auto-tune sound, auto-tune isn't just pitch correction. It's actually getting rid of the vibrato in notes. You can see most of the long notes here have this obvious pitch waver to them. And if you hit Command A to select all, and then pull up on this middle bottom hot spot here, hot zone here, or pull down rather, you can lower the vibrato amount down to 0. Now, typically when you lower the vibrato, you're just doing this to kind of unaccentuate, where the singer has too much vibrato. Here, it's going to sound very robotic because we've taken any pitch drift out of the note, basically.
In this world of ruin, in this world of tragedy, you've gotta take what you can get. Gotta give what you can live with.
So if that's the sound you're going for, great, but it's not usually the sound I'm going for. I usually like more, I prefer more natural sounding tuning. All right. So for my third example, I have another vocal example for you. So for the third example, I have a male vocal up here, along with just doubled acoustic guitar down here. So let's listen to what this sounds like. Well, if you won't believe in me, and if you tell me just to leave. All right, so just a little bit of an excerpt from a song. What I'm going to do with this vocal is, first I'm going to tune it, but then I'm also going to create artificial backing harmonies behind it. It's another little trick you can do with flex pitch. So what I'm going to do preemptively is I'm going to duplicate the track. I'm going to put my snap mode in bar. I'm going to make sure I'm in relative value. And I'm just going to hold Option while I drag this down to the new track just to duplicate it. So this bottom one is going to be my harmony track that I'm going to create later. I'm going to mute it for now, but just for later, we're going to create harmony on that track. So for now, let's just take a look at the lead vocal here. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and solo it. Let's turn on flex pitch, let it analyze. Double click on it to open up in the track editor. So let me just zoom out a bit here, or zoom in a bit rather. Let's see what we've got here. So this is a vocal melody in E minor. Let's just listen to it by itself. Well, if you won't believe in me, and if you tell me just to leave. Now, just like before, I can do the Command A thing. pull up the pitch correction. So everything snaps to the grid nicely. Let's see what this sounds like. Well, if you won't believe in me, and if you tell me just to leave. All right. And I'm just going to pull a little bit of the vibrato out, not a whole lot. I'm going to pull it down to like 70%, 76%. That works just fine. Well, if you won't believe in me, and if you tell me just to leave. All right. Next, let's go to our second track here that we're going to create harmony with. And, well, I'll keep them both soloed. Actually, I tell you, I'll unsolo this one for now. We'll come back to it in just a moment. Let's choose flex pitch. Let it analyze. Double click on it. There we go. So we have the exact same thing we had before. Whoops. Well, if you won't believe in me. This time I'm going to go ahead and do the pitch correction again. But I'm going to lower the vibrato even more on this one since it's a backing vocal. Now what I need to do is I kind of need to know what notes to harmonize this melody to the original melody. This takes a little bit of music theory knowledge. If you don't understand scales and harmony, well, you're going to have a tough time with this. But if you do, it can be a really useful tool to create artificial backing vocals. So let me just hit Command A real quick to select everything. And I just happen to know that I want to harmonize this down for the most part, not across the board, but for the most part, I want to harmonize this whole thing down a third from my current key. So I'm going to pull this down. I'm going to pull this whole thing down a third. So basically what was an E is now a C. The thing is, I want this to be quantized still in the key of E minor, even though I'm harmonizing down a third, because I want F, for instance, I don't want F natural, I want F sharp. I don't want A flat up here, I want A natural. So I'm going to go ahead and do a Command A. I'm going to do a scale quantize to natural minor. I'm going to choose E natural minor. Now, this is probably not going to work perfectly right out of the box. I'm probably going to have to do a few things to fix it, but we'll see what it sounds like right now. Well, if you won't believe in me, and if you tell me just to leave. All right. The first thing I know that I want to do is on these kind of top notes up here. Won't believe in me. I know that these notes need to be A, and this E here actually needs to be, I believe, F sharp. Let's pull it up. And this G here needs to be an A. Won't believe in me, and if you tell me just to leave. And like before, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. There we go. These notes need to be moved from G to A as well. And then the last thing I know I need to do is these C's down here. Instead of harmonizing on a third on these notes, I'm actually going to harmonize on a fourth. So I'm going to pull them down to B. And again, there's no cut and dry way to know how to do this. Part of it's creative. Part of it is just depending on your music theory skills. There's no, like I said, there's no cut and dry way that's going to make these harmonies sound perfect every time. You just kind of have to play with it. So let's see what the harmony sounds like. Well, if you won't believe in me, and if you... Okay, it sounds okay. The problem is it's a little froggy sounding because when we pitch shift it down, there's obviously some digital artifacts that are produced from the pitch shifting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command A again, And this time, I'm going to use the formant shift, which is on the lower right corner, and I'm going to pull this down. Now, what formants are essentially the meaningful overtones in the human voice that make vowels and vocal sounds sound the way they sound. From a production standpoint, when you lower formants, especially in vocals, what you're doing is really lowering the overtone series. When you raise formants, you're raising the overtone series of the voice. Now, it doesn't affect the bottom note, the fundamental, so the note's still going to be B, but when you lower the overtones, it's going to sound a little more masculine, a little more deep sounding. When you raise the formants, it's going to sound more chipmunky or more feminine sounding. So because I sound a little froggy or chipmunky here, I'm actually going to lower the formants to give a little more of a bassy sound to it, a little more of a masculine sound to it. So let's try that, -52.
Well, if you won't believe it.
Let's try even a little bit more.
Well, if you won't believe in me, and if you tell me just to leave.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so let's try this out with our lead vocal in harmony. Let's turn both of them on. I'm just going to pan the lead vocal a little to the left and the harmony a little to the right. It's usually a good measure to do that. I'm going to pull the volume up on the lead. I'm going to pull the volume down a little bit on the harmony. Let's see what these two sound like.
Well, if you won't believe in me, and if you tell me just to leave.
Yeah, not too bad. There's some weird phasey sounds in there. Those things can usually be taken care of by maybe bumping one a little more at a time than the other, or maybe spreading the pan even more. So let me go ahead and do that and just spread the pan a little bit more, and let's see what these sound like with our guitars.
Well, if you won't believe in me, and if you tell me just to leave.
There we go. So the little phasey noise you're hearing here is the breath. It's because the breath wasn't picked up as a note, and so it's essentially the same in both recordings, but for whatever reason, it's either behind a little bit or it's slightly out of tune from the original, so it causes those little phasey issues. So sometimes you have to go in and maybe use automation to pull out those parts, or maybe just delete them with the marquee tool or the scissors tool or whatnot. All right, so that's flex pitch in a nutshell. In no way is this a 100% complete tutorial on flex pitch, but I think it's good enough to get started and start working with it. My honest opinion of flex pitch is that it's not nearly as good as other applications and other plugins out there used for pitch correction. For instance, I actually use Melodyne most of the time when I do pitch correction because I find it's more stable. I find it's more accurate. It doesn't colorize the tone as much as Logic's flex pitch does. Another good one out there is Waves Tune. I've never really used auto tune much. I mean, I have, but not a whole lot. But it seems like, again, to me, Melodyne is really the way to go if you want accurate, high quality pitch tuning or vocal tuning. So. But flex pitch isn't completely useless. I mean, it's a really good, cheap way to maybe fix minor pitch problems. I wouldn't use it as your main tuning program, but it's good. Like I said, it's good for just fixing minor things. But it tends to colorize the tone of vocals quite a bit if you push it up or pull it down too far. So the other thing to keep in mind is to work in small chunks. Don't analyze an entire vocal track in flex pitch if you don't need to. If there's just one phrase that needs to be affected, just cut that one phrase out, put it on its own track, and just analyze that one phrase in flex pitch. Because again, if you colorize the tone of your entire track, you're going to end up with a not as good recording as you would normally have had you only just flex pitched that one part. And then a third thing to keep in mind is that the clearer toned, the more simple or clearer the timbre of the singer you're working with, the easier it's going to be to affect their pitch accurately without a whole lot of tone changes. Singers who are real raspy or real growly are going to be really, really difficult to work on with flex pitch. And even when I use Melodyne, it's really difficult to work with real raspy singers because the program has trouble picking up where the fundamental of their note is. And when you pitch shift them, there's a lot more overtones that you're working with because their voice is a lot more complex than a clear toned singer. I find that female vocalists who are kind of just standard pop vocalists are really easy to tune. Myself, as a male singer, I have a pretty clear tone tenor voice, as opposed to most male singers who have a little more rasp, especially rock and roll singers, have a little more rasp in their vocals, so they're a little more difficult to tune. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks again for watching.